The first time, she tried to curry favor with Zhaoyi with tea leaves, but the emperor stopped her halfway. Before he could react, he robbed her of her tea leaves and left her surrounded. The second time, she wanted to curry favor with the Empress Dowager. At the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, before she could even offer her carefully crafted tea, the emperor withheld it, leaving behind her an injustice. The third time, she had just stolen bamboo shoots with the palace maid and was preparing to go back and cook a delicious meal. The emperor rushed out halfway to grab a meal, and if it didn't taste good, he would punish her. She tried her best to barely pass the test, but before she could be happy, the emperor told her that he still wanted to stay and sleep. I completely fell for her now, eating and drinking for free, sleeping for free, and being so stingy that I refused to reward anything. At night, the more she thought, the more she felt aggrieved. All the silver she had saved up in her early years was used to support the emperor, but now it's gone. If she can't afford it in the future, she will be punished. The more she thought, the more sad she became. Tears streamed down her face, waking up the emperor who was sleeping next to her. The emperor hurriedly coaxed her and said, "Be good, don't cry. I haven't even given you a reward yet. How could I punish you?" After coaxing for a while, he finally made her burst into laughter when he promised to provide her with food and drink. The emperor breathed a sigh of relief. This little concubine must be pampered well in the future and dare not make her cry anymore. Keywords of the novel. Hanhan Concubine Palace Battle Uprising Record. No pop-ups. Hanhan Concubine Palace Battle Uprising Record TXT Complete Collection Download. Hanhan Concubine Palace Battle Uprising Record Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Something's Wrong with the Palace Maiden. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Something's wrong with the Palace Maiden. Recently, the young palace maid Lianhua had her own careful thoughts. She heard from the sisters of the palace maids privately that as long as they climbed onto the emperor's bed, they could wear gold and silver, enjoy delicious food and spicy food, which couldn't help but make her feel a little tempted. The days of palace maids are all bitter, and the environment is tense. It's difficult to eat and sleep well, especially when lotus flowers have a large appetite and a sharp mouth, and they can't eat well every day. After listening to the private words of the sisters in the palace, Lianhua secretly planned. On this day, the emperor returned from the lower court, furious and with a foul complexion. The eunuchs and palace maids serving in the palace were trembling, afraid of getting moldy and becoming fertilizer underground. Xia Hua is on duty as the abbot on this day. In other words, the abbot is laying a bed and hanging a mosquito net before the emperor goes to bed to serve him. Zhaoyi is not good at women. He only hires people to sleep once every few days, and usually follows strict rules with clear rewards and punishments. When it was almost time to go to bed, Zhaoyi's face was still very bad. Although Zhaoyi looked very handsome, Xia Hua was still very afraid of making mistakes and angering him. You should know that Zhaoyi does not show any mercy when punishing people, so she couldn't help but want Lianhua to help her take over. The bookkeeping job of Lianhua has also been done before, and it is not done many times. This job is usually a job that requires a lot of effort. The most important thing is, who doesn't want to show more face in front of Zhaoyi? Moreover, when encountering concubines to serve as attendants, the generous concubines reward the people around the emperor, both openly and secretly. Therefore, this task is only done when the palace maids and sisters do not want to do it. When Xia Hua told Lianhua today, Lianhua agreed. She didn't know that Zhaoyi was in a very bad mood today. What she thought about was that she had been looking for this opportunity for a long time. As a small palace maid responsible for miscellaneous matters, her chances of getting close to Zhaoyi were very limited. Today, Xia Hua's sister was willing to let her do this fat job, and she couldn't help but be slightly grateful to her. Despite being exhausted from a day's work, Lianhua was still very excited when she thought of not having to work and lying down to eat and drink spicy food after climbing up the bed. From then on, she opened her mouth and reached out for food. The tiredness of the day seemed to sweep away, and she trembled slightly with nervousness, causing her to be unable to untie the rope and buckle of Zhaoyi several times when changing clothes. The emperor became impatient and thought to himself, I don't know who trained this little palace maid. Her hands are so clumsy that she can't even undo a button. Looking down, I saw the little palace maid sweating slightly on her forehead and looking a bit flustered. She was 15 or 16 years old, with a slightly baby fat cheeks and a cute appearance. Well, it's just a servant. Just turn around and let it change. There's no need to punish her. At this moment, Lianhua's mind was filled with the plot of how to seduce. She should first give a charming smile to the person, then pretend to fall into their arms, and then climb onto the bed successfully, as depicted in the picture book. The result of using two things at once was that the button was untied multiple times before being untied, and Lotus breathed a slight sigh of relief after being untied. The emperor has been watching the Lotus all along, and seeing this makes him even more intolerant of criticism. It's okay not to replace it, but it's just a few minor flaws. In the future, he will improve it by practicing more. But Lotus, who had breathed a sigh of relief, began to twirl her eyes, her cheeks slightly reddened. She took off her clothes and put them aside, her figure hesitating. Her eyes occasionally glanced at the emperor, as if she was pondering something. The emperor immediately realized that something was wrong with the palace maid. She couldn't help but feel angry and let out a cold snort. Let's see what she wants to do and whether she can withstand the anger of the emperor. The emperor, who was already in a bad mood, suddenly turned black like the bottom of a pot. Lianhua didn't notice the emperor's expression and was pondering how to fall into the arms of Zhaoyi later. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the lotus flower, the clothes are still worn out. Zhaoyi is about to go to bed, and if he doesn't fall, it will be too late. Lianhua became nervous and only heard a "yeah" sound. She panicked and fell, rushing towards the emperor. Seeing this, the emperor doesn't understand anything else. This little palace maid is planning to seduce him. She's such a chubby dog. She fed the rules she learned to the dog. I saw the emperor catch the young palace maid who was rushing towards him, but unfortunately, the young palace maid's reckless momentum was too strong, and she suddenly threw him down on the bed. Lotus, who was supported by the emperor on her waist, hit her nose against his ribs, causing her eyes to ache. Her wet eyes lifted their heads and learned to be charming, smiling at the emperor. Although the order is reversed, a charming smile cannot be omitted, as one is afraid that the therapeutic effect may not be enough to climb onto the bed. The emperor was stunned for a moment. The little palace maid smiled quite beautifully, with neat and white baby teeth, rosy cheeks, curved eyebrows, innocent gazes like a deer, and a soft waist. In this era, thinness is considered beautiful, and the concubines in the harem are all thin and holding hands like poles. How could this little palace maid be so soft that she couldn't help but pinch them? Lianhua was confused. It's different from the plot. How could Zhaoyi suddenly pinch herself? This is a scene that only hooligans in the picture book have. How could it be? Lianhua's face turned red and she was stunned and at a loss. The emperor couldn't help but feel a little moved. Since this little palace maid wanted to climb the bed, she was satisfied. Tomorrow, she would be promoted to a lower rank and sent far away. When he thought of this, the emperor turned over and pressed against the little palace maid. One night, the spring breeze blew by, and Lianhua's whole body felt sore as if it had been crushed. Early in the morning, she carried a small bundle and led an 11 or 12-year-old palace maid towards the Canglan courtyard near the cold palace. Dynasty. Ariel. 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 Sweetness is the main focus, with a slight twist in the process. It mainly describes the process of the emperor and the lotus subduing each other. The lotus subduing the emperor is like moistening things silently, and if the emperor wants to subdue the lotus, then Gaga. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. This is different from what was imagined. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. This is different from what was imagined. Lotus walked and pondered all the way, which is different from what is depicted in the picture book. The imperial title was given, but Jin Cheng chose to pick a daughter. The called Kainu is just a person in the palace who looks like half a servant and half a master. She is the lowest level concubine, slightly higher than a servant, but not the true master. The residence is the most desolate Canglan courtyard on the west side of the palace. The name sounds good, but it is very desolate near the cold palace, and there are usually few people going there. The palace is said to be very dilapidated and almost abandoned. The Shanggong Bureau assigned a young palace maid named Zhaoyi to serve her, saying that she was here to serve her. However, the person assigned was only a half-year-old child, and he didn't understand anything when he first entered the palace. It's uncertain who would take care of who. Lianhua vaguely felt that she had lost money, and the fragrance and spiciness had not yet disappeared. She had already paid for it and could not regret it. She gave herself a boost, at least her grade improved, better than being a palace maid with endless work to do every day. She also had her own yard to live in, which was better than before. Arriving at Canglan Courtyard, I saw a courtyard nestled among tall weeds. Some tiles on the roof of the houses in the courtyard were broken, and it was certain that water would leak on rainy days. Seeing this, the lotus flower felt cold and pulled out of its heart. Xiaozhu. Will we stay here in the future? Zhaoyi pulled up Lianhua's sleeve with some fear, saying that the palace was tall and magnificent, but the courtyard in front of her was not as good as her own home that had caused a disaster. Lotus wants to cry without tears. There is no spicy fragrance, but there is plenty of grass. Fantasies are completely shattered, and my intestines are regretful. If I could start over again, I would definitely not climb the bed again. What is said in the picture book is all fake. What else can we do? Pull grass, pick tiles, and rest in the courtyard. Let's work hard and take the path we have chosen while crying. Fortunately, Zhaoyi comes from a farming family and knows how to do a lot of work. 2 years passed in a blink of an eye, and Lianhua Sheng turned herself into a skilled worker. At the beginning, there were more tasks than when I was a palace maid, such as uprooting grass, repairing roofs, and repairing houses. The daily work was endless, but fortunately, after finishing these tasks, I had Zhaoyi maintain them on a daily basis. The only thing I had to do every day was how to fill my stomach. The desolate courtyard is now well organized, with flowers, grass, melons, fruits and vegetables planted all over the garden. Planting vegetables in the palace is a waste of money. It's hard to meet the needs of those who think rural areas are crude and talented. Besides, the courtyard is also off-center, and there are not many people passing by all year round. Lotus doesn't pay much attention to these details. After all, the monthly salary of a female picker is only 6 taels. It's not easy to support 2 people in the palace. If you don't find a way, you will starve to death. In the evening, the cool breeze was gentle and it was the most comfortable time in early summer. Lotus, accompanied by Zhaoyi, walked along the imperial garden road with the freshly made clear dew tea as a celebration of Zhaoyi's ascension to the throne. As a small courtesan in the palace, no one usually pays attention, and strictly speaking, a high-ranking concubine doesn't even appreciate a gift from a small courtesan. However, Lianhua still wants to go and give it as a gift. Zhaoyi is currently a hot and tricky concubine in the palace. It is said that she is the most favored person by the emperor. Everyone in the palace doesn't give her a fair face. If she flatters her well, she may be looked up upon by others, and the eunuchs of the Shanggong Bureau won't dare to arbitrarily deduct her salary. Lotus has great confidence in its carefully prepared clear dew tea. This tea is a secret recipe passed down by its family, and there is only one family in the world. Drinking it not only brings a sweet aftertaste, but also clears the heart and qi in summer. Drinking it in winter can alleviate coldness and dryness. Before the decline of our own family, we could earn a lot of money every year just by drinking this tea. However, when our family was defeated, Lianhua was sent to the palace for refuge. Even so, the ancestral secret recipe has not been lost elsewhere. Only the Lianhua family knows how to make it, so it is believed that Su Zhaoyi will like this tea. The tea leaves used for making tea were discovered by lotus flowers while strolling around the imperial garden. The garden in the palace is perfect, gathering all the rare and exotic herbs from all over the world. If you have nothing to do, you can find a basket full of delicious food. The bitterwood tea tree used to make clear dew tea was found by the lotus when searching for food in the garden. Outsiders only know that the leaves of this tea tree are very bitter, and no one thinks that the leaves of this tea tree can still make such delicious tea. Coincidentally, the ancestors of the lotus know how to remove bitterness and turn bitterness into sweetness, and this tree has become a treasure tree in the eyes of the lotus. Little master, let me take it. There's no such thing as a master holding something and a servant holding it empty-handed. Little Qing snatched it several times but couldn't get it. No, I can't. If this tea wants to be delicious, I should also pay attention to its preservation and not touch people's sweat. Look at your sweaty head and sticky hands, how can you hold it? I'll take it. Lianhua attaches great importance to this gift, and the future will be better off with this one move. She personally does everything to make Shaoqing useless. After a day of memorials and discussions, the emperor took a walk in the imperial garden to relieve fatigue. The weather was very comfortable, and he even breathed out a lot of frustration from the past. Passing through a quiet small garden, I heard footsteps and occasional conversations in front of me. The voice was gentle and pleasant, and the emperor stopped Zhang Qing, the head of the imperial household department, who wanted to shout and continued walking forward. I saw the figures of two women imprinting in my eyes. The one wearing a light blue sheer long skirt seemed to be the master, looking somewhat familiar. Her cheeks were a bit baby fat, her small nose, and a pair of round almond eyes under her curved eyebrows. The tail of the eyes was slightly raised, making her lovely face slightly charming. She had a pink peach blossom pinned on her head, and her expression was very lively. She held a small jar tightly in her hand, while the other seemed to be a girl, always wanting to grab the jar, afraid of damaging it too hard. Her face was full of distress. Coming, the two reunited. On the first day of their reunion, the emperor began to dog, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Eternal Greed for Rites. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Eternal Greed for Rites. Seeing the emperor, the woman who seemed to be the master was momentarily stunned and her reaction slowed down. Zhang Qing coughed and the woman woke up and quickly bowed, saying, "See you, long live Lord." The girl looked at the master in confusion and bowed along with him. No gift, the emperor said, looking down at the two women in front of him. Xia Wansui. The woman tugged at the girl next to her, lowered her head and stood to the side. Subconsciously, she wanted to hide the jar in her hand, as if she felt it was inappropriate, and then forcibly stopped. The emperor, who was not very concerned about the jar in her hand, couldn't help but glance at it and ask, "What is in her hand?" "Long live, it's just some ordinary tea." The woman was a bit nervous and stuttered, emphasizing the word ordinary. The emperor was curious about what could make this woman care so much, as if she didn't want to be seen. "Zhang Qing, come up and take a look." Cheer. After listening to the conversation between the emperor and his servants, the woman felt a bit panicked and reluctantly handed the jar to Zhang Qing. She eagerly watched as Zhang Qing presented the tea to the emperor. The emperor opened it and saw that it was indeed tea, but he couldn't recognize what kind of tea it was. Upon smelling it, the tea had a strong aroma, refreshing and pleasant, very pleasant. The emperor asked, "What kind of tea is this?" The woman lowered her head and said in a slightly muffled voice, "Long live, this tea is called Qinglu tea." "What is unique about it?" "If you go back to me, if this tea is made into a tea bag and carried on your body, it can make you clear and eye-catching. The woman paused for a moment, hesitating a bit, feeling that it would be inappropriate not to finish. Then she continued, if you drink it while soaking it, it will have a sweet aftertaste. Drinking it in summer will clear the heart and relieve heat, and drinking it in winter will relieve fatigue and reduce dryness. The emperor could see that the woman seemed to be afraid that the tea would be taken away and not returned, with a stingy appearance. The emperor thought with some malicious interest, the little girl is afraid that I will covet her tea. So what if I become greedy? So he said, I haven't tasted this tea yet, so I'll take it back and brew it to taste. Zhangqing, take it away. Lianhua stared at the bright yellow figure that had passed away in astonishment, unable to regain her senses for a long time. Was she robbed by the emperor? Since climbing up the bed that night, I have hardly seen the emperor for over 2 years, and the emperor has never thought of her again. Unexpectedly, when she went out to give gifts for the first time, her beard was cut off halfway, causing her plan to flatter Zhaoyi to be stillborn. Her debut was unsuccessful, and Lianhua wanted to cry. Shaoqing looked at her with some concern and called out, Master. Lianhua sniffed and said, let's go back. What can I do if I don't go back? What else can I give away even after the gift is gone? The lower-level concubines in the palace have the rule of 1 promotion every 3 years. The current emperor is not lascivious, and promotion of concubines follows the rules. Lower-level concubines below the level of beauty are promoted every 3 years based on their seniority, while higher-level concubines are rewarded and punished based on their achievements and qualifications. It only takes more years for a high-ranking concubine to be promoted through qualifications than a lower-ranking concubine. After all, the positions of high-ranking concubines are very limited. If promoted every 3 years, there would already be overcrowding and no room for promotion. Su Zhaoyi was promoted from a concubine to Zhaoyi without any warning in this strict system. People from the previous dynasty knew that it was Su Zhaoyi's father who won the battle and made contributions, and that he was grateful to his daughter. However, the people in the harem did not know this, thinking that Su Zhaoyi was favored and promoted beyond the norm. In this era, the former and the harem were strictly separated, and the harem was not allowed to interfere in politics or have any disputes with the former. It can be imagined that many insider information was only known by those with higher positions, while others were completely unaware. Among the people promoted by the lower concubines this time, there is the name Lotus. Lotus was granted the title of Kainu for more than 2 years, but less than 3 years. The war in the previous dynasty went smoothly, and the emperor's Long Yen was greatly pleased. The concubines who had been in power for more than 2 years were also promoted, which was a good time. From then on, Lotus became the true master of the 7th grade, with a monthly salary increase from 6 taels to 10 taels. This was a great blessing for the Lotus masters and servants. On this day, Lianhua dressed neatly and set off with a strong and spirited spirit to attend the birthday of consort Shui. After Jin Wei agreed, Lianhua felt that she was completely different and had confidence when going out. Of course, being poor is still very poor. The master and servant struggle on the food and clothing line every day, but Lianhua thinks it's not a big deal. Life is getting better and better. My monthly salary is a bit low, and I often get cheated. But I have my own vegetables to grow, and sometimes I go to the imperial garden to enjoy the autumn breeze. Life is also enjoyable. The gift she brought was still Qinglu tea. After being robbed last time, Lianhua was really lethargic for a while. After participating in the promotion ceremony and strolling around the magnificent palace, Lianhua envied and became envious. She began to regroup and spent nearly 20 days remaking Qinglu tea. This time, the object of flattery has been changed to the Empress Dowager. If the flattery is done well and the Empress Dowager leaks her fingers, it will be enough for the Lotus to eat and drink well. Drawing on the painful experience and lessons of the previous time, Lianhua dare not follow the same path this time. If her beard is cut off again, she will have to vomit blood. In order to prevent being cut off, Lotus made a careful plan by replacing the tea container with a box and wrapping it with cloth. From the outside, no one knows what is inside. Fierce and spirited, raise your hands and give me the motivation to code words. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Do you send your concubine or me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Do you send your concubine or me? Lianhua dressed up and led Shaoqing towards the Huaqing Hall of the Empress Dowager. It must be a lively day, with concubines of all sizes appearing in the palace. She had a low rank and had to arrive early to make a good impression. It was said to be dressing up in full attire, but in fact, it was just a depiction of eyebrows, using a homemade rouge powder made from crushed petal powder to wipe the face, tying a bun on the head, embellishing a few silk flowers inside, and wearing a pair of pendant earrings in the same style as silk flowers. The style of the silk flower is very unique, and it is all handmade by lotus flowers themselves. Thinking of jewelry, Lianhua's mood became somewhat gloomy. Even though she didn't usually care, she only had a silver hairpin and 2 pairs of earrings in her hand. These jewelry were brought from outside the palace when I entered, and I can't find them in today's colorful occasions, which is very shabby. Fortunately, they are skillful and have been replaced with silk flowers, which can be considered clever. Approaching the Huaqing Hall, it was indeed extremely lively, and the concubines gathered in groups of 3 or 2 to talk. Lianhua felt that she had already left early, but there were still many people who arrived much earlier than her, but it was also because she lived far away and others lived nearby. Saluting the high-ranking concubine, Lianhua felt a bit sour in her heart, as if she had the lowest rank. The salute made her waist ache. I talked to several older sisters about jewelry again, and Lianhua had some knowledge before the decline of the family, so the topic was quite relevant. 2 older sisters praised the beautiful lotus silk flowers as if they were friendly. Lotus blushed and whispered, "I'll give them a few flowers later." At this moment, a eunuch singing, "Long live Lord," arrived, and all the concubines came out to welcome him. There was no empress in the palace, and the highest-ranking one was the noble consort. At this moment, the noble consort takes the lead, and different concubines stand behind according to their grades to welcome the long-live lord together. I saw the emperor walking briskly towards the noble consort, lifting her up and saying that he didn't need to be too polite to love her. He asked everyone to come flat and carry the noble consort into the hall, with the Wansui lord and the noble consort sitting at the front. The noble consort's seat was slightly behind. Today, the Empress Dowager of the imperial concubine is blessed with countless treasures, shining brightly all over her body, with a smile on her bright face that never stops. Lotus was at the bottom of the list, mentally thinking about how to give gifts to make the noblewoman notice her. She was a bit nervous and her hands were slightly sweating. There were too many people, but not being nervous was not enough. The concubines in the palace congratulated the Empress Dowager on her birthday with great happiness. After congratulating her, the banquet was announced, and the hall was filled with the sound of cups and cups being exchanged. The high-ranking concubines sitting in front of her spoke eloquently like wheels, with a stream of witty words that seemed inexhaustible. Occasionally, someone would tease the noblewoman and make her burst into laughter, and the emperor would occasionally agree with 1 or 2 words, looking happy and harmonious. The higher concubines didn't talk to the lower concubines about anything. If you cut in and say something wrong, it would be disrespectful. Lotus only buries her head and eats hard. Tonight's banquet was also something she had been looking forward to for a long time. There were many good things to eat, although it was a bit cold, and other concubines just wanted to eat a little. However, the lotus flowers tasted very sweet, and it was impossible to eat so many good things at once on weekdays. It was really thanks to the blessings of the Empress Dowager. After the banquet, the palace maids came forward to remove the dishes and serve tea. Lianhua felt a bit regretful, as many people poured out their leftover dishes. It would be great if they could take them away for her to eat for many days. The palace maid who withdrew the dish from her was somewhat contemptuous. Among many people, only the lotus vegetables were eaten up, and she had never seen the world before. The next step is for the concubines to send congratulatory gifts to the noble consort and empress. Starting from the high-ranking concubines, there is a dazzling array of treasures, and even the lotus flowers cannot distinguish who is who. It is only known that the people in front of them are all of higher grades than themselves. When bowing, they shout Empress Wanfu, and whoever is who is not inferior. Of course, the emperor was the first one to give a gift. The Hotan Jade Rui, which means good luck every year, made the imperial concubines smile happily. And the concubines gave various gifts to their noble concubines, including ruby headscarves, coral ornaments, precious medicinal herbs, and so on, all of which were precious. Lianhua also opened her eyes and couldn't help but feel anxious. Her tea is so inconspicuous that even if it is not brewed, it won't attract attention. Can it make the Empress Dowager look at it differently? At this moment, Lianhua realized that she was too confident. She was afraid that the alley would be deep for a good meal, and she couldn't help feeling anxious, but didn't know what to do. The whole banquet was nearing its end, and finally it was the turn of the Lotus to give gifts. In front of everyone's attention, Lianhua was nervous and stiff, slowly stepping out of her position. She lowered her head and held the box high, bowing to the Empress Dowager and congratulating her. I wish the Empress Dowager a happy birthday and eternal youth. The emperor raised his eyebrows as he saw the lotus flowers standing out, and recognized her as the little concubine who had been offering tea on the imperial garden road a while ago. The eunuch of Sili sang, Lian promised to offer a box of clear dew tea, wishing the Empress Dowager a happy birthday and eternal youth. The gift list was written in advance, with each concubine delivering a congratulatory message and the eunuch singing out the ceremony loudly. Lianhua continued the eunuch's words with a trembling voice and said, Madam, the clear dew tea was personally made by the maidservant. It is sweet and has a lingering aftertaste when entering the throat, and it is very refreshing. It is during the hot summer weather, and I only hope that it can reduce the suffering of Madam's summer symptoms by a little or two. The emperor's eyebrows twitched, Qinglu tea. This little concubine was reluctant to give it to me a while ago, but today she is willing to give it to your esteemed concubine willingly. What does this mean? Taking a person's tea, I don't even know whose dog emperor it is. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. How to thank your concubine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. How to thank your concubine. Speaking of this clear dew tea, after the emperor returned from the robbery, he heard the little concubine blow so hard and immediately had someone brew it. After drinking it, it was as it was said, with a sweet taste and endless aftertaste. It cleared the heart and cleared the heat, and after drinking for several days, the thought process of the memorial became much clearer. Unfortunately, there were only 2 liang, and it didn't take long to finish drinking. When I tried to find it again, I couldn't find it. The prefectures didn't offer anything, and the people couldn't buy it either. I thought of looking for the girl who offered her that day, but I didn't know her name or her rank in any palace or hall. It wasn't easy to make a big fuss about such a small matter, so I gave up. However, drinking other teas now doesn't taste good anymore. At this moment, seeing the little concubine willingly and even happily offering to the noble concubine, flattering her, how could it not provoke the emperor's anger? The emperor didn't show any signs on his face and spoke lightly, Did you really make this clear dew tea? There was a moment of silence in the hall, and everyone was amazed by the emperor's sudden opening. You should know that the emperor had never commented on someone else's gift before. Upon hearing the emperor's question, Lotus suddenly had an ominous premonition and cautiously said, It's the servant. How is this tea made? Lianhua's heart is a bit chaotic. How could Wan Suiyi care about how to make tea? Are you trying to steal the secret recipe? After eating from the pot, still want to finish the pot? I can't help but think less about it. Wan Suiyi has a criminal record. Lianhua remained silent and boldly replied, I would like to report to Lord Wansui that Qinglu tea is a secret recipe passed down from my family and cannot be leaked. It cannot be taught unless it is a member of my family. Please forgive me. The more Lotus spoke, the lower her voice became, and the more she spoke, the less confident she was. She trembled slightly, wanting to kneel down but feeling that she was right. The hall completely quieted down, and someone took a deep breath. No one expected this lowly concubine to dare to slap Wansui in the face. It was all royal soil in the world. Wansui wanted to know what was wrong and dared to refute face in public. This statement completely ignited the emperor's anger. This little concubine is indeed extremely bold. The emperor chuckled and suppressed his anger, saying, Okay, it's great. I saw that your clear tea was barely enough to drink, so I accepted it. As for the noble consort, I will make compensation separately. Lianhua became anxious after hearing this. At first, Wansui really wanted to indulge in the secret recipe for tea. If the secret recipe didn't satisfy her desire to indulge in her own tea, she hurriedly said, Wansui, this is the birthday gift from the maid to offer to Empress Dowager. How can I offer it to you again? The hall was filled with gasping sounds, and this lowly concubine was really crazy. She refused Wansui twice in a row. This was something that Wansui admired, and others were eager to offer it, but she repeatedly refused. Upon hearing Lianhua's words, the noble consort became anxious. Why are these two foolish people so ungrateful? Wansui can't just give whatever he wants, but she refused under her banner. Wansui thought it was her instigation. Hurry up and make amends. Lian promised that Wansui will be interested in your tea, which is a blessing you have cultivated. Why don't you quickly offer it to me? But this is the tea that I have painstakingly prepared and sent to you, Empress. Lianhua felt a bit sad. This tea is really good, and she worked hard. Why did Empress let it be sent to Wansui? The emperor's face turned even worse. How could this little concubine be so stubborn? The noble consort was secretly anxious and had a clever idea, saying, if you offer it to this palace, then it belongs to this palace. If this palace offers it to Wansui, do you have any objections? I dare not, but after offering it to the empress, it will be her own. Let her dispose of it. Lotus commissioned Chu Baba handed the tea box to the eunuch. She is not ignorant of how to handle people and things. In her eyes, giving to Wansui is more cost-effective than giving to the Empress Dowager. Giving to Wansui is like beating a dog with meat buns, and there is no sound at all. After giving this tea to the Empress to drink, she knows the benefits and will even ask herself to make it again. The Empress will always remember her own benefits. Who dares to cheat her in the palace in the future? This is really too important for oneself. Who would have thought of being so persistent, but Wansui still has such thick skin and is not generous enough to say no more. Most importantly, the Empress did not appreciate it and turned around to give it to Wansui, which is really heart-stopping. Thank you very much, Empress Ai. If I like it, I will be happy. The Lotus leaves and the banquet continues. This is just a small interlude, and it's enough to talk to others. At the end of the banquet, Lianhua walked out of the Huaqing Hall feeling dizzy. The tea she had worked hard to make became a gift from the noble consort and a thank you to the noble consort. Through this incident, the concubines who had intended to befriend earlier avoided the lotus flower like a plague-avoiding spirit. They seemed to have never seen this person before, skipping the lotus flower and walking away in 2s and 3s. Hard work won't please, stealing chickens won't erode rice, and there's nothing left. This is the current situation. Thinking about it, the lotus flower wilted for a few more days. After the emperor returned, he became increasingly frustrated and frequently made a lowly concubine slap him. This tone is really hard to swallow. Let's check. It was the little palace maid who was sent to a remote courtyard while climbing the bed. No wonder she is so ungrateful. Her character is really not good, and she only hates being treated lightly in the beginning. After thinking about it again, what's the point of being angry with an emperor and an ignorant little girl? It's just that. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Unauthorized Demon Theft. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Unauthorized Demon Theft. The weather is getting hotter and hotter, and even with ice in the Lijiang Hall, it is still stuffy and hot. Every afternoon, the emperor finds it unbearable and cannot sit still. Therefore, he takes half an hour every afternoon to take a walk under the shade of the imperial garden to cool off the heat. The emperor has a habit of not going to crowded places, and often likes to go to some remote shady paths, which can be a bit wild when strolling around. On this day, the emperor walked slowly towards the Qingzhou garden, where the bamboo was tall and green. There was a pavilion in the garden, which was a cool and pleasant place in summer. It was located in the northwest corner of the imperial garden, which was relatively remote. Just 100 steps away from the garden, two girls suddenly appeared. The one in the pink dress is holding the basket with both hands, which is heavy, and the one in the dark blue is holding the basket with one hand and a short shovel with the other. I saw the two of them dancing, chatting and laughing happily as they walked towards the other fork in the road. Oh, that girl in a pink dress is so familiar. Isn't she the little concubine climbing on the bed? The voices of their conversation came from afar, and only the one in the pink clothes said. Cut the plump and tender one into thin slices, heat up the fried pork fat until fragrant, cut a chili peppers and stir-fry until fragrant, then stir-fry the bamboo shoots until they turn into a golden brown color. Sprinkle a little salt on them and take them out of the pot. One layer of oil is used to stir-fry the bamboo shoots, which are delicious and fragrant to eat. This method can best taste the taste of bamboo shoots. Wow, little master, I'm going to drool, exclaimed the little girl in green. Be patient and make another cold bamboo shoot. Cut the bamboo shoot into dingzhua and cook it. Add some sugar, sesame oil, vinegar, lobster sauce and chili oil and mix it. Then sprinkle some peanut chips. It's crispy and refreshing. Let's do a pot of fragrant and soft white rice porridge and eat it together. It's really a perfect match in summer. Little master, you know a lot, of course, I've eaten a lot before. The remaining bamboo shoots, the older ones, are sun-dried to maintain their freshness. Put a handful of autumn stew in it, it's both delicious and delicious. Seeing people about to leave, the emperor gave Zhang Qing a wink. Zhang Qing understood and took small steps as he hurried forward, shouting as he ran, the young master in front is standing still. Zhaoyi is here, come and pay his respects. Upon hearing the sound, both of them turned their heads together. Lotus felt a thump in her heart and looked at the emperor with caution. She quickly tugged at the cloth covering the basket, covering the bamboo shoots tightly, and could vaguely see the shape of the bamboo shoots. After covering it, I walked up to Zhaoyi with Shaoqing and began the Wanfu ceremony. The basket and short shovel were placed aside. The emperor thought to himself, what's that look like guarding against thieves. Flat. What's in the basket? Here we go again, here we go again. Last time I ran into Zhaoyi on the roadside with tea, I asked the same question. However, the tea was gone, and this time it's bamboo shoots. Lianhua said with some difficulty, Master Hui, it's bamboo shoots. Where did these bamboo shoots come from? I picked it from the green bamboo garden. Just came out of the bamboo garden, didn't you ask knowingly? With permission? Never. There are no palace masters picking, who can I ask for permission, do you know the sin? Lianhua raised her head and waved her hands repeatedly, both surprised and afraid. She hurriedly explained, Long live Lord, this is the same as picking flowers. Others pick flowers to decorate their clothes and rooms, while servants pick bamboo shoots to decorate dishes. Picking flowers can also be done with bamboo shoots. How could Zhaoyi be so wilted? He either wants to covet her things or accuse her. He holds high authority and is heavy, so it's as easy to crush her as it is to crush an ant. This time, Lianhua is not as straightforward as the previous time. She was caught stealing bamboo shoots and felt very guilty and frightened on the spot, afraid that the charges would be confirmed. The emperor sneered and said, "The little concubine's character is not good, and she keeps going through the motions. Which rule says that if you pick flowers, you get bamboo shoots?" Lotus stared at the emperor with big apricot eyes and realized that there was indeed no such rule in the palace regulations, and even the rule of whether flowers could be picked was not written. But isn't this a convention? If it's not written, it's just not written. Zhaoyi must punish him, it's not impossible. What should we do? Lotus is a bit panicked. Watching the little concubine feel exhausted and unable to refute, with a look of mixed fear, the emperor felt a bit pleased. Isn't it love to slap him in the face? Finally, I caught this little girl and saw how he treated her. Picking without permission is considered theft. It's a big crime in the palace. You're so brave. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Canglan Courtyard of Lotus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Canglan Courtyard of Lotus. Lianhua knelt down in fear and stuttered, saying, "Yes. Yes, sir, I knew I was wrong. It's just that." Zhaoyi hid behind the Lotus and knelt down, trembling with fear. This little girl followed Lotus as soon as she entered the palace. She had never seen much of the world before, but it scared her to death. Zhaoyi was so scary, so she picked some bamboo shoots and said that if she wanted to be punished, she would be punished. Compared to Zhaoyi, Lianhua is much better. Although she is afraid, she is not as scared as Zhaoyi. The emperor's gaze fell on the lotus flower all along. Seeing that she was afraid, he felt a sense of satisfaction and nodded in satisfaction. Seeing that she was still trying to defend herself and worried that she might say something wrong, she interrupted her and said, "If you're wrong, you're wrong. It's not just that. Don't act recklessly. As my concubine, you should lead by example." Lianhua and Zhaoyi claimed to be together. The emperor took 2 steps forward, clenched his fist under his chin, coughed twice, cleared his throat, and then said, "I just heard that you want to make bamboo shoots into vegetables. In that case, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. I'll go to your place for dinner. If it's not delicious, I'll punish you." To tell the truth, the weather is very hot these days, so the emperor has no appetite. After hearing the little concubine's words about how to eat fried bamboo shoots, cold mixed bamboo shoots with fragrant rice porridge, the emperor swallowed saliva. "I'm tired of the big fish and meat cooked by the imperial dining room every day. Especially in summer, I can't eat at all. Hearing these simple dishes of clear congee, I have an appetite." Lianhua was a bit confused. She said she was going to her place for dinner, but it's still a good thing not to be punished. Zhang looked at the lotus flower meaningfully and reminded, "I still don't appreciate the grace of Zhaoyi." Returning to her senses, Lianhua and Zhaoyi Zhaoyi temporarily refrained from killing or punishing her, and returned to the Canglan Academy with their people. Entering the Canglan courtyard, the emperor found it somewhat novel. Other people's courtyards were rare and exotic, while the little concubine's courtyard was dominated by fruits and vegetables, with only scattered flowers and plants. The emperor waved his hand and asked them to prepare for dinner, then began to visit on his own. Lotus wouldn't dare not work hard. She is still guilty now. In order to get rid of her guilt, it is usually Zhaoyi who is in charge of the spoon. She is guiding the country next to her. Today, she will take over the spoon and personally entertain the emperor and ancestors. Speaking of which, only the palaces of high-ranking concubines can be equipped with small kitchens, and the Canglan courtyard was specially equipped with a small kitchen for a beloved concubine during the reign of the late emperor. For some unknown reason, the Canglan courtyard fell and was abandoned for many years without anyone to manage it. After Lotus moved in, they were given a discount. Lotus was pleasantly surprised when she discovered it. After cleaning and arranging some items, she immediately put them into use. She replaced the daily routine meals provided by the imperial kitchen with rice, flour, grains, and oil, and cooked them herself, thus freeing herself from the days of eating the pig food provided by the imperial kitchen. At the end of the Shan dynasty, the sun was gradually setting in the west. Lotus and Zhaoyi were busy in the kitchen, while the emperor was visiting the courtyard. There are small chili peppers, green melons, potatoes, and some dishes that the emperor cannot recognize in the yard. In order to encourage farming, the emperor personally goes to the fields during the farming season every year. That's all. He recognizes the main grains that concern people's livelihoods, and wants the emperor to recognize that most of the dishes are a bit demanding. The emperor looked up to this little concubine with some admiration. In the deep palace, most of the concubines were careless and did not divide their crops. Not to mention planting vegetables, just the word farming made them feel crude. He didn't expect this little concubine to be able to grow vegetables, and secretly thought to himself that although her character was not very good, it was not without merit. After visiting the courtyard, the emperor walked into the bedroom of Lotus. The room was decorated warmly, and upon entering the entrance, one could see a small hall. At first glance, there was a round table with 2 round stools. On the round table, there was a small and delicate round-mouthed vase about the size of 2 fists, with a bouquet of gardenia flowers inserted on it, which looked very fresh. Next to it was an ordinary small teapot and 2 teacups. On the right side of the hall, a washroom was separated by a screen, and a wooden bucket, a rack containing a wash basin, and some women's toiletries could be faintly seen. On the left is a small moon-carved wooden door, with linen curtains hanging on both sides to distinguish it from the interior. The innermost part is the bed, with a light green thin gauze tent hanging on it, and a thin-necked porcelain vase next to it, with a half-blooming lotus flower inserted. Entering the inner room, the dressing table was placed under the window, with a bead curtain hanging down from the middle high and sides low. The most peculiar thing was that the beads of this bead curtain were colorful and had different shapes. The emperor approached and touched the beads. It turned out to be a curtain made of small gravel, which had been dyed with some color. On the windowsill below, there are 6 mud-pinched tumblers, each painted with different expressions, whether happy, unhappy, or angry. Each expression is very interesting, making people feel the meaning of the expressions but also cute and tight. Sitting on the dressing stool, the emperor flipped over from side to side, revealing that this little concubine did not have any valuable ornaments or jewelry, but everything revealed novelty and was very interesting. "Long live, the meal is ready," Lianhua called out softly. Watching Zhaoyi flip around here and there, still lingering in front of the Bogu shelf for a while, Lianhua felt a little scared and afraid that he might take something away. The room was filled with her beloved items, which she had saved up for over 2 years. She felt heartbroken for missing anything. The emperor was surprised. Was it done so quickly? "I watched it for half a day." Stepping out of the inner room, there was no dinner placed on the round table, and the emperor looked at the lotus. The emperor's mouth disdains his body, but he is also tired and cowardly. Little Lotus, there will be a good show in the next 2 chapters. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Stay at Canglan Courtyard tonight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Stay at Canglan Courtyard tonight. As if seeing the question from Zhaoyi, Lianhua said, "Sir, please come with me. The dinner is set in the pavilion outside, and it's very cool to eat there." Taking the person to the pavilion, Lianhua began to serve the emperor's meals. Zhang Qing, a human spirit, had long noticed that the emperor had some differences with this young master. When the dinner was ready, he hid out and let Lianhua serve alone. Lianhua felt bitter in her heart. After working hard for a long time, she didn't eat a mouthful. Seeing that the emperor ate delicious food, drank congee bowl by bowl, and clamped the food with each chopstick, she swallowed the saliva secretly. If the emperor does not speak, the concubines cannot sit down and dine together, especially the lower-level concubines, who can only stand and serve the emperor food. Not to mention, the dishes made by this little concubine are really not bad. The emperor's appetite has greatly increased, and his appetite has been much larger than usual. Discovering that Lotus was eagerly staring at the dishes on the table, the emperor began to tease and savor them while eating. After finishing the last bite of the dish, he also summarized, "The amount is not enough, pay attention next time." If Zhang Qing were in front of him, he would definitely be surprised. Zhaoyi is very strict with rules and emphasizes eating without saying anything or sleeping. Now, he has set an exception for this little concubine. It is truly surprising, and what is even more surprising is that Zhaoyi's appetite has increased significantly compared to before. The lotus heart is stuffed. We have eaten all the congee and vegetables. There is nothing left. We can only have a little cold food left over from our meal. Let's just forget about stealing bamboo shoots, let's not do it again. At this moment, the emperor was feeling relaxed and in a good mood. Eating in this pavilion is very wonderful, with a cool breeze that completely eliminates the stuffiness of summer. A cluster of sunflower trees and flowers planted around them bloom perfectly, complementing the sunset scenery. I couldn't help but feel that this little concubine really knows how to make a living. With her stingy demeanor, the sunflower tree has both ornamental and practical value, making it the top choice. The key is that it blends well with the pavilion, making it a wonderful place to dine in during summer. Upon hearing the emperor's words, Lianhua's previous stuffiness was lifted, and the knife hanging around her neck was finally lifted. She raised a big smile and said, "Thank you for your grace. Zhang Qing, prepare for it. I will rest at Canglan Courtyard tonight." The well-fed emperor felt that he should give her some honor and favor, so he thought that staying here for one night would be a good favor to serve her dinner. Zhang Qing, who came out of nowhere, gave a chirp and went out to call for someone to prepare. Lotus's smile froze on her face, and Zhaoyi was eating and drinking and still sleeping here. It's like a bolt from the blue. The emperor stood up and took a few steps, then lowered his head to look at Lianhua. He felt that this little girl seemed to be happy and foolish, stunned. Giving some favor would make her happy like this. It was really easy to be satisfied. The emperor raised a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, satisfied with the lotus's response. When holding the lamp, Zhang Qing commanded the eunuchs to prepare their bathing supplies. The emperor glanced at the lotus and walked into the bathroom. Lianhua didn't understand the meaning of that glance and stayed in place to pack quail. Zhang Qing bowed and smiled, pointing to Lianhua in the direction of the bathroom, saying, "Lian Xiaozhu, please." Lianhua turned her head and puffed her mouth behind Zhang Qing's back, cursing in her heart that the grand internal steward was too good at hiding and hadn't done much since dinner. It wasn't like this in the Star Palace before, at least Zhaoyi used eunuchs for bathing. Why did she let herself in to serve him this time? Although Lotus was unwilling in her heart, she couldn't resist being too timid and didn't dare to resist. She entered the bathroom in a disheveled manner and began to help Zhaoyi change clothes. The man's naked body was seen when he climbed up the bed last time. Lianhua was a bit shy and didn't dare to look, with red ears. The emperor kept his head down and watched every move of the lotus flower. Seeing the red tips of the lotus's small ears, he felt quite cute and pinched them, saying, "Why are your ears red?" Lotus bit her lips and remained silent. After taking off her clothes, she whispered to the emperor, "All right, I can go into the bathtub now." The emperor smiled lightly, stepped into the bathtub, and began to bathe. Lotus took a bath towel and began to help the emperor scrub up and down. At first, the emperor felt that Lotus's strength was too weak and she didn't rub hard enough, so Lotus had to rub harder. Zhaoyi's body is really sturdy, with thick skin. The lotus flower has only just exerted enough strength to suckle. Due to working too hard, water occasionally splashes on his body, even his shirt gets wet, and he sweats all over from the heat. He needs to wipe the sweat off his forehead from time to time. When rubbing against the emperor's chest, I saw that the little concubine's hair was a bit messy. Her temples were already wet, and a few wet strands of hair hung down and stuck to her cheeks. Her nose was covered in small beads of sweat, her cheeks were as white as jade, her forehead was as smooth as jade, her serious gaze, her charming eye tips, her pink cherry lips, and her wet outer garment revealed the shape of an inner garment. Her bulging breasts were about to burst out. The emperor felt a little thirsty and his lower abdomen became hot. His gaze towards the lotus grew increasingly hot. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Accompanying eating, drinking, and sleeping. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Accompanying eating, drinking, and sleeping. Feeling the scorching gaze of the emperor, Lianhua looked at him in confusion, feeling a sense of embarrassment. She wanted to turn to his back and rub her back. Just as she was about to turn, the emperor grabbed her arm and lifted her into the bathtub, pressing her down before starting to kiss. Lotus wanted to struggle, but the emperor's strong thighs held onto her legs, his left hand tied her waist tightly, his right hand touched her belt, his mouth wrapped around her lips, and he sucked hard. As the clothes and skirts faded away, the spring light suddenly burst out, and the emperor's eyes became even more profound. He held the lotus flower inch by inch and savored it carefully. After kissing for a long time, it seemed that the kiss was not enough, and he felt that it was not convenient to be in the bathtub. He carried her out of the bathtub and prepared to carry her to bed. Lianhua sensed his intention and felt very embarrassed. She tightly grasped the edge of the bathtub and said, "Long live, the door, the door." The door was not closed, and people outside might have seen it. The emperor understood and shouted from outside, "Someone, close the door." When the door closed, the emperor crossed the screen holding a lotus and strode towards the bed. A room full of spring light lingers until midnight. At the hour of Mao, Zhangqing, the chief eunuch of the imperial household, and two young eunuchs waited on the emperor to wake up. Lotus enthusiasts also followed suit, occasionally helping to pass a belt and accessories. The emperor's court uniform was not something that ordinary people could help wear, it was very complex, and even with the level of a lotus, it could only be used as a starting point. In the past 2 years, Lotus has been sleeping until the third shift of the day before waking up. After all, the daily tasks are only about filling the stomach. There is no need to wake up so early. Although the days are tight, they can still get by. They only have to think about how to eat better and find more delicious food all day long. It's easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but it's hard to go from extravagance to frugality. It's been a long time since I've tried to get up so early. Lianhua was drowsy and stunned, completely devoid of the liveliness of the day. Seeing the emperor laughing a bit, before leaving, I couldn't help but pinch her face and went to court. Farewell the emperor. Lotus climbed onto the bed and continued to sleep, sleeping until noon. The summer weather became hotter and hotter. For a while, the emperor seemed to be addicted to coming to Canglan Academy. At first, he only came occasionally when he remembered it, but later it developed into coming every 2 days. The emperor noticed that this little concubine was quite interesting. She spoke lively and boldly, but when teasing her to punish her, she was extremely timid. Watching her eat flat, the emperor appeared serious on the surface, but in fact, he felt a sense of inner satisfaction. In the hot summer days, she was very comfortable. Coming to Canglan Courtyard was as relaxing as going to a summer resort. Another thing is that the little concubine has excellent cooking skills. She always has her own unique insights on how to eat and match each ingredient. After introducing each dish through her mouth, she can always arouse the emperor's appetite, and she can eat an extra bowl of rice. In previous years, it was the most bitter summer, but this year, she is particularly comfortable. It's so hard for Lianhua, and I don't know what kind of wind Zhaoyi has drawn. He comes here every 3 or 5 years, and he hasn't seen anyone in the past few years. Now he has made up for it all. As long as the long-lived Lord comes, Lotus will have to accompany him in eating, drinking, and sleeping. At this time, Zhang Qin doesn't care about anything like a shopkeeper, and has Lotus to serve everything. He is so tired that his back is sore, as if he has returned to the days when he was a palace maid and was dominated by his sister, Gong Yi. The most important thing is that the emperor is too difficult to raise, and she wants the best of everything. She doesn't have any delicacies, so she can only use her mouth to talk about the daily diet of cabbage and radish, deceiving others. Alas, Lian Huoku. The monthly salary for the palace is only 10 taels, and it has shrunk by 3 to 4 taels through the efforts of the Shangong Bureau. In the past, raising 2 large living people was barely enough. After all, there was a ready-made vegetable garden, and one could go to the imperial garden to enjoy the autumn breeze. But now it's difficult to raise another emperor. The rice, flour, grains, and oil exchanged by the regulations are not enough to eat, and meat has to be bought separately. It's really expensive, and the monthly salary is not enough. I have been using the silver I saved up as a palace maid to make up for it during this period. When will such a day come to an end? It's better to go back and become a palace maid, Lianhua thought angrily. Lotus intentionally messed up and ran away the emperor, but she didn't dare. She really had a good idea in her heart, but in reality, the dog was very timid. That's right, during this period, emperors have been eating and drinking lotus flowers, but they are unaware of it and have no rewards, as if it were taken for granted. Zhang Qin seemed to be unaware, but Lianhua hinted to the chief steward, saying that the food here was rudimentary. Why not let the imperial kitchen prepare meals for Zhaoyi? Zhang Qin happily said that Zhaoyi has a good appetite lately. As long as Yi is happy, no matter how simple, he will not blame him. Lianhua's face wrinkled with sorrow upon hearing this. During this period, Lianhua has been very peaceful and dare not go to the imperial garden to enjoy the autumn breeze under the watchful eye of Zhaoyi. After all, if Zhaoyi suddenly asks where the ingredients for this dish come from, it won't be enough. But as the wealth she had accumulated from the past began to bottom out, Lianhua became anxious and her mind became lively. She sent a message to the eunuch in front of her, saying that Zhaoyi would come up late for dinner, and in the back, she quietly took Shaoqing to the bottom of the Huaqing pond to catch fish. Fish, this thing, was also bought by Lotus from normal channels before and made for the emperor, so the emperor didn't ask much after eating it. He thought it was still from the imperial kitchen, but he was a little confused about why there must be fish every time he came to eat recently. Fortunately, Lotus can make many different things, stewed, fried, steamed, and eaten in different ways every day. The emperor didn't think much about it, only feeling that this little concubine's craftsmanship has become better and better, and the fish meat is delicious and delicious, it's getting better and better, the little concubine is doing very well, and the materials in the imperial kitchen are also very good. Sweet in the mouth, and MMP in the heart is one of Lotus's skills. Classmates, give me some feedback. Whether it's collecting, recommending tickets, or leaving messages, just seeing them motivates me to code words. Please leave your footprints. Thank you, classmates. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Meiren. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Meiren. Gradually, the emperor came in the evening and brought the memorials to the Canglan Academy for review. The ancient bookshelf in the inner room was moved out to the hall, leaving room for the emperor to work. A table was placed for the emperor's office, and the already small side hall became even more crowded. When the emperor was in office, Lianhua would make her own things on the dressing table, embroider a handkerchief, or cut a wooden doll, and occasionally pour tea and water for the emperor, and get along well. This morning, before dawn outside, Lotus was serving the emperor to change clothes and prepare to go to court. Now, Lotus and Zhang Qing can only help the emperor put on court clothes together. The area is too small and there are too many people to stretch. The emperor, while wearing his court uniform, thought to himself, this side hall is too small and not enough. Why don't we replace it with a larger one? Thinking of this, the emperor said, Canglan Courtyard is located in a remote area. The side hall is too small, and the main hall is in disrepair for a long time. I think it can be replaced. Upon hearing this, Lianhua, who was still a bit sleepless, suddenly felt drowsy. Excitedly, she thought to herself, we're here, we're going to reward you. We didn't have to work in vain for so many days. Are you going to give her a reward? A good day is coming. Thinking about it, Lianhua's face turned red with excitement, her eyes shining brightly as she looked at the emperor. Xian's words reached her lips. Looking at the excited expression on the lotus flower, the emperor felt a thump in his heart. This little concubine has a criminal record of climbing the bed, and her character needs to be studied. If she is not meritorious or hard-working, she will be rewarded. If she cannot turn around, she will have even more crooked behavior. The emperor suddenly became alert and realized that she could not be rewarded. Not only would she not be rewarded, but she also had to be warned not to distort her thoughts. Therefore, she said, when you have accumulated enough qualifications to increase your position, the Imperial Palace Bureau will naturally arrange a new palace. You should wait with peace of mind. As soon as the emperor finished speaking, Lianhua immediately bowed and said, thank you for your guidance, Wan Suiyi. Halfway through the ceremony, she realized and changed her mouth. Her heart was like a bucket of cold water pouring down, completely cooling through. There are two underlying meanings to this sentence. Firstly, we will never make an exception to give her a promotion in the future, and secondly, there may not be much reward in the future, so let her not think too much and stay calm. After the emperor left, Lianhua lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Her heart was cold and flustered. These days, she had run out of money to eat, drink, and sleep with. What was her purpose? When Wan Suiyi slept with her, she obediently called out little Lianhua in bed, turned her head and turned her face, not recognizing anyone. It was truly heartless to stay on the bed. The more I thought about it, the more my heart became congested. It's better to go and water the vegetables with Shaoqing. When the vegetables grow up, they will be given to her, while Wan Suiyi will only make her bleed. Thinking of this, Lianhua stood up, picked up her shoes, changed into a coarse linen clothes, and went out to water the vegetables. A few more days later, Consort Shui posted to all the palace concubines to hold a lotus appreciation banquet in Bilianchi, and lotus flowers were also invited. Lianhua was very happy. Jin Qing agreed, but it was different. She envied the post and touched it. The material was really good, and at first glance it was very expensive. The characters on it were also well written, and her own dog-crawling characters were not easy to handle. When she was a child, she only knew she had eaten and didn't practice handwriting well. Lianhua regretted it a bit. If she had to write in the future, she would be laughed at and have to practice handwriting later. Lianhua knew that many concubines would occasionally hold flower and moon appreciation events in private, where they could recite poems and write poems. She didn't have the opportunity to participate before, but maybe in the future, after all, she could endure for 10 or 20 years and eventually become a fifth-grade beauty with her qualifications, and still have time. On the morning of the day of the Lotus Appreciation Banquet, Lotus woke up early to tidy up and dress up. Last night, the Emperor did not come to the Canglan Academy, so Lotus ate well and slept soundly, waking up full of energy. I chose a water blue dress, spread a thin layer of petal rouge on my face, brushed my eyebrows, applied some lipstick on my lips, and adorned my hair with several silk flowers of the same color as the dress. I inserted the only silver hairpin, and the lotus flower was ready to go out. This outfit sets off the lotus skin, which is tender and watery, like an elf in a flower bush. It is so fresh and refined that it is extraordinary. It looks so beautiful that even the little blue eyes don't blink, exclaiming that it looks good. Lianhua felt a little proud in her heart, but when she thought of the concubines and sisters with different colors, she quickly restrained herself and instructed Shaoqing not to speak recklessly at the Lotus appreciation banquet and to be cautious in her words and actions. It's no wonder Lianhua gave countless instructions. As soon as Shaoqing entered the palace, he followed her. He had never seen anyone powerful in the palace before. As they approached the Blue Lotus Pond, they saw a beautiful woman wearing a water blue dress walking towards them from a distance. Lianhua had a slight impression, as if she was Li Meiren. At the birthday banquet of the Empress Dowager, Li Meiren was very eloquent and gained a lot of attention, which is why Lianhua had a deep impression of her. Seeing the same colored dress, Lianhua felt a little uneasy. She slowed down and hung her head, waiting by the roadside to pay her respects. As soon as the person approached, Lianhua and Shaoqing squatted in a blessing ceremony and said, "Blessed be the Empress." Li Meiren didn't stop until she reached the lotus flower, looked down at it from top to bottom, snorted, and said, "Lift your head up." Lotus looked up according to words, her eyes drooping. "Dear classmates, I am a ruthless coder chicken and I need your collection, comments, and recommendation tickets for feed. Come and feed me a little. Cluck cluck, end of this chapter.